The docking clamps hissed like an angry lizard, and the airlock opened with the enthusiastic groan of a ship that had long since given up on impressing anyone. Cade Mercer stood at attention, his uniform somewhere between standard issue and slept in, chewing on a protein stick that tasted like ambition and chalk. He didn't salute, he didn't bow, he just looked at the alien stepping through the hatch and said, "You're taller than I expected. I was told diplomats were compact and full of excuses." Lorinth did not respond. Her eyes, violet with vertical pupils, swept over him like a security scanner deciding whether he was worth vaporizing. Her ears, long and ridged like sculpted obsidian, twitched slightly. She wore armor that shimmered in refracted blues and silvers, the kind of outfit that said, "Yes, I could kill you. No, I won't enjoy it. I requested a Solari pilot. I was told I would receive a Solari guard," she said, voice sharp as cut crystal. "You got me instead," Cade said. "We're out of Solari. They got tired of diplomatic babysitting and went back to their moons. Lucky for you, I only charge extra for sarcasm and near-death experiences. Then I shall pay in disdain." "Oh good," he grinned. "We have that in universal currency." She moved past him without further comment, heels tapping like a countdown on the ship's steel corridor. Cade followed, dragging a caracase that hummed slightly from the inside. When she looked at it suspiciously, he shrugged. "Snacks," he said. "That case emits radiation signatures consistent with confined plasma coils." "Spicy snacks." She stopped at the entrance to the cockpit. "I will not speak unless necessary." "Understood. I'll interpret your silences as deep admiration." "No, you will interpret them as contempt." Cade smiled as he sank into the pilot's chair, flipping switches. "Just checking. Are death glares how you Solari say hello, or are we already in the flirting stage?" There was a long pause. "I hate all humans." "Noted. I'll just file that under initial impressions. Let me know if we move to grudging tolerance or reluctant appreciation." The ship groaned as it lifted off the hangar floor, inertial stabilizers whining before leveling out. Through the viewport, stars winked like knowing accomplices. They didn't speak for the first 6 hours. Cade ran ship diagnostics and updated the nav logs. Lorinth sat rigid in the co-pilot seat, reviewing files on a holopad. Her posture suggested she might stab the universe itself if it made a wrong move. He tried not to stare, but every time her ears flicked, it was like watching the antenna of some elegant, very dangerous creature zero in on prey. He broke the silence just before their jump through the Nyrix gate. "You ever wonder if those gates are sentient? Like maybe we're flying through the digestive tract of a bored hyperspace worm?" "I do not waste cognition on hallucinations." "You're missing out. I once hallucinated an entire tribunal of sentient ferns, gave me legal advice. One of them had a monocle." She blinked slowly. "Your species, cognitive resilience is clearly exaggerated." "Probably, but we do bounce back from heartbreak and orbital impacts like nobody's business." She returned to her holopad. Cade leaned back and hummed the jingle from an old Earth soap commercial. 12 hours in, during the dark shift cycle, the cabin lights dimmed. Cade stretched and stood, yawning dramatically. "Want coffee? I do not consume earth poisons." Bold stance, especially since Solari tea melted a hole in my boot last summit. "Your footwear was inadequate." "You're not wrong. I bought it from a street vendor on I.O. It came with complimentary foot fungus." Lorinth's lip twitched. Not quite a smile, more like a muscle reacting involuntarily to exposure. He brought 2 cups back anyway, one of coffee, and one of neutral amino fluid approximating Solari tolerances. She stared at it as if expecting it to detonate. "Relax," he said. "If I wanted to poison you, I'd pick something more subtle, like my jokes." She took the cup without thanks. It steamed faintly. For a brief moment she studied him. "You are not what I expected. Let me guess. You were hoping for a stiff-jawed hero with a noble past and a tragic loss involving kittens." "I was expecting a liability." "I am that," Cade said cheerfully, "but I'm a charming one." They sat in silence, broken only by the hum of engines and the occasional system beep. He adjusted trajectory. She recalibrated the long-range sensor net. At one point, their hands almost brushed across the console. Neither acknowledged it. At hour 21, an asteroid field diverted their route. Cade handled it manually, muttering Earth curse words and calling the navigation AI a sentient can-opener with trust issues. Lawrence looked amused. Or maybe confused, hard to tell. Do you always insult your ship's intelligence? Only when it deserves it. She knows what she did. The field passed, the ship steadied. Lawrence took a slow breath, unstrapping her gauntlets. Her hands were fine-boned but calloused at the knuckles. Warrior's hands. I was told humans talk excessively when nervous, she said. Nah, Cade replied. We talk excessively because silence makes us remember the universe doesn't care if we exist. Another long silence. Then to his surprise she said, the Solari do not believe in a careless universe. We believe the stars are intentional. Nice. I believe the stars are mostly just trying to be left alone. She sipped her fluid. Perhaps they hate humans too. Cade grinned. They've never met me. At hour 28 she asked for music. Without comment he played an old Earth jazz track, static-filtered and echoing. It filled the ship with the ghost of horns and midnight cigarettes. At hour 31 she yawned. He tried not to notice. She tried not to let him notice that she noticed him noticing. He offered her the co-pilot chair's recline function. She refused. An hour later she activated it herself. By hour 34, Cade was flying with one hand on the controls, the other fiddling with a broken stylus. His eyes drooped. Hers were already closed. Her head rested against the wall at first. Then slowly, very slowly, it tilted and rested on his shoulder. Cade didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe too loudly. He just sat there, staring ahead into the stars with a Solari diplomat asleep on him and the faint smell of alien tea and burnt coffee in the air. He whispered, definitely flirting. The moment she woke up, he pretended he hadn't noticed. She lifted her head from his shoulder in one smooth, practiced motion that said this never happened, straightened her armor with surgical precision, and resumed her glacial posture as if nothing in the galaxy had ever leaned or rested or, heaven forbid, sought comfort. Cade remained silent, his expression neutral, though a very small part of his face attempted to smirk. He repressed it. Barely. You snore, she said after a long silence. Pretty sure that was the engine, he replied. Unless I've been fitted with hyperdrive lungs, which frankly would be amazing. She didn't respond. She was still avoiding eye contact. The next few hours passed in stiff silence, the kind of silence that wore a suit and carried a clipboard. The freighter coasted through the fringe sectors of the Veil corridor, where old war drones drifted like forgotten grudges and comm signals distorted into ghost whispers. The ship's automated alert pinged. Long-range scan detected 3 anomalies. Cade tapped the console. Pirates, ancient tech ghosts, or another asteroid field. Place your bets. Lawrence activated a secondary scanner. Tactical probability indicates rogue war machines from the decay era. Autonomous. Pattern recognition failing. So, angry tin cans with trust issues. They may engage. Do they have to? I just cleaned the windows. The ship shuddered suddenly. A flicker of distorted gravity. On the main viewer, one of the anomalies surged forward. A sleek drone vessel with rusting plates and glowing orange drive trails, its surface marked by ancient battle symbols. It launched 2 smaller interceptors without warning. Ah, Cade said, flipping on the defense grid, so it's going to be that kind of day. Lawrence was already moving. Her hands danced across the weapons console, activating shield arrays and charging the turret systems. Cade tilted the ship into a sharp curve, engines groaning in protest. Plasma fire streaked across the void behind them. One bolt nicked the rear stabilizer. The ship spun. Could you not let us get hit? She snapped. I'm trying to show you the authentic human flight experience, he replied, teeth gritted. Mild panic, questionable decisions, and a soundtrack of muttered curse words. She fired the rear cannons. One of the drones exploded in a ball of shattered metal and fizzing magnetic coils. The second one banked and returned fire, striking the ship's left flank. "Shields at 54%, she announced. "Great, that's still a passing grade, technically." He yanked the controls into a dive, threading the ship between two jagged remnants of a broken space station. The drones followed. Lawrence launched an electromagnetic pulse from the rear compartment, overloading the lead drone systems. It sparked violently, then drifted dead into the black. "One left," she said, voice cool. "Want to name it before we blow it up?" She raised an eyebrow. "Is that a human custom?" "Only when we want to feel bad later." The final drone accelerated, adjusting to their trajectory with frightening precision. Cade rerouted auxiliary power to the engines, his fingers flying across the console. Lawrence loaded a torpedo. As they flew past an old comm satellite, she fired. The torpedo struck the drone dead center. The explosion flared briefly, then died into the void. Cade exhaled. "That went well. I give us a solid 7 out of 10. Lost style points for the screaming." "I did not scream." "You did internally. I could sense it." She turned to him slowly. "You are impossible." "Technically true, but my charm compensates." They limped out of the corridor. Systems were stable but fraying. The ship's shielding needed recalibration. Cade switched to manual mode and plotted a detour to the nearest outpost. A half-dead refueling station built into a moon crater, still listed in the Union Registry as operational, probably. While the ship auto-navigated, Cade checked the power lines in the rear crawlspace. He returned covered in iron grease and holding a melted circuit board. "So, I have good news and bad news," he said. "Begin with the bad." "We're out of emergency connectors." "And the good?" "I found a Solari energy bracelet in the supply locker, but I can use it to bypass the grid." She stared. "That device is ceremonial. It channels emotional frequency. It's not meant for wiring." "Sounds perfect," he said cheerfully. "We'll have an emotionally available ship in no time." The patchwork solution worked, miraculously, although the lights dimmed and flickered in sync with what Cade guessed was his emotional state. Every time he thought about food, the hallway lights brightened. When he remembered an old heartbreak, the cargo bay dimmed slightly. He found this hilarious. Lawrence did not. That night cycle, they sat together in the mess hall. The ship still creaked. A single flickering panel overhead buzzed like an existential mosquito. Cade opened a ration packet and stared at its contents. "Behold," he said, "human cuisine, gray cubes of protein disappointment, flavor. Vague memory of chicken." Lawrence sniffed her own packet, which contained nutrient mist. "Solari cuisine is superior. We consume ambient essence." "Sure, but can ambient essence be grilled?" "It can be harmonized." "That's what I call jazz." She gave him a look that could melt titanium. He grinned. They ate in silence for a while, the kind of silence that was no longer awkward. Cade leaned back in his seat, watching the stars scroll past the observation window. "You ever wonder," he asked quietly, "if maybe some wars happened just because no one was willing to sit down and share bad food?" She didn't answer right away. Then softly, "I have wondered that." He glanced at her. "That sounds dangerously like agreement. Do not get used to it." "Too late." They stared out the window. Later, as they prepared for rest, Lawrence paused at the door to the sleeping quarters. "Thank you." "For what?" She hesitated. "For not treating me like a monster." He shrugged. "I save that for Mondays." She went inside without another word. Cade stared at the closed door for a long time, then muttered to himself, "I think that counts as flirting too." The emergency landing sequence activated itself before either of them could argue about it. The onboard AI, a monotone voice they'd both started calling Captain Obvious, calmly announced the phrase Cade least liked to hear. "Atmospheric integrity compromised. Initiating descent to nearest landable surface." He slapped the override. Nothing happened. Lawrence raised an eyebrow. Is the ship ignoring you now? We're in that phase of the relationship where she only talks to make me feel bad. Then your bonding has advanced. The screen displayed their destination. An unregistered moon marked by a blinking caution symbol and the elegant Union descriptor. Probably hazardous. Cade read the data. Breathable air, unstable crust, electromagnetic interference. Sounds like my last apartment. Prepare for impact, she said, already strapping in. I was preparing for therapy. But sure, let's start with this. The ship descended, rattling as the moon's gravity well seized it like a hungry hand. They hit the surface with a controlled thud, skidding across a bed of glittering crystal sand that sparked faintly with magnetic discharge. The lights flickered. One of the rear thrusters coughed out a final puff of plasma and died. Cade unbuckled, stood up, and immediately fell over as the floor tilted. Graceful landing, 10 out of 10. You are bleeding, Lawrence said, not looking up from her panel. It's just a dramatic nose, likes to be noticed. She stood, adjusted her armor, and grabbed a scanner. We need shelter while repairs are initiated. Cade checked the sensors. There's a collapsed mining structure half a kilometer west. Looks abandoned. Might still have working systems. She nodded once. I'll lead, you carry the field kit. Because I'm the strong one. Because your decisions led us here. They exited through the rear hatch into the moonlight, which had an odd lavender tint and made Cade feel like he'd walked into a sentient spa. The air tingled. Lawrence moved with fluid confidence, her boots leaving precise marks in the dust. Cade mostly tripped over uneven terrain and muttered apologies to rocks. They reached the mining structure, a rusted framework built into the edge of a rocky hill. The entry panel sparked when Lawrence touched it. System still alive, she murmured. Let's hope the AI isn't homicidal. They set up a makeshift camp in the main chamber, where old mining bots lay deactivated like sleeping beasts. Lawrence adjusted her field emitter to create a thermal shield around them. Cade sat on a cracked crate and opened a rations tin. Inside were compressed vegetable wafers and a mystery paste labeled Nutrient Blend A17, suitable for most species. He took a bite and winced. Tastes like betrayal. She examined the contents. This is not suitable for Solari digestion. Lucky you. They ate in silence for a while. Then Cade pulled out a portable repair module and began scanning the parts they'd salvaged from the freighter's engine. Wires hung from his jacket pocket. The toolkit beeped every few seconds, probably judging him. Lawrence watched. You work like an improviser. I prefer the term chaotic genius. Is the chaos intentional? Mostly. The genius part is the surprise. She reached into the field kit and handed him a Solari energy relay crystal. Use this. It'll stabilize your power circuit. He blinked. Wait, are we cooperating? Momentarily. I feel so. Supported. She tilted her head. Do humans require constant validation? Only those of us with unresolved paternal issues, which, according to statistics, is all of us. He connected the relay. The repair module glowed green. For the first time in hours, something worked. They spent the rest of the evening cycling systems, syncing repairs, and avoiding eye contact that lasted more than 3 seconds. Occasionally, Cade cracked a joke. Lawrence responded with precisely timed silences that felt just short of tolerant. When the wind outside picked up, shards of mineral dust striking the metal shell of the outpost like alien hail, Cade finally spoke again. You said earlier that Solari believe the stars are intentional. Yes. Do they also believe people are? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she tapped a setting into her gauntlet and activated a low harmonic field that quieted the wind's vibration. We believe individuals are chosen by the stars to fulfill patterns, she said. Those who resist are destroyed. Those who adapt become more than they were. So you believe in fate. I believe in resonance. Cade leaned back, letting that word echo between them. I used to think the universe was random. Then I joined the military. Then I met you. She looked at him sharply. What does that mean? It means the pattern's getting interesting. He expected a retort. Instead, she stood and walked to the other side of the room, gazing out through a cracked window where distant lightning glowed in slow pulses. The silence stretched. Cade shifted uncomfortably. If I told you a joke now, would that help or make it worse? She didn't turn around. Is it better than the toaster joke? No, it's worse. But it involves a sentient umbrella and a love triangle. Then save it for later. He leaned back again. That's basically a yes. Later that night, as the storm intensified and the structure creaked like an old man with bad knees, they lay opposite each other across the room. Cade stared up at the metal ceiling. Lorenth watched the entrance, her weapon on standby. I think the ship's salvageable, he said softly. I agree. If we don't die here, I'm going to suggest we upgrade the shielding system. Maybe use actual parts instead of emotionally charged jewelry. That would be wise. He paused. Thanks for helping today. She glanced at him. You're still a liability, but a slightly more competent one. Her eyes lingered. Slightly. The storm raged outside, but inside, the silence was warm. By the time they returned to the freighter, the storm had softened into a whisper of static on their suits. The airlock hissed open without protest. Systems flickered back to life one by one, thanks to Cade's jury-rigged fixes and Lorenth's crystal calibration. She insisted it worked because of harmonic alignment. He claimed it was because he kicked the capacitor in just the right spot. You're lucky I didn't let the ship vaporize you, she said as they re-entered the cockpit. Luck is just the universe applauding my reckless behavior. Or punishing mine. He grinned, sat back at the control panel and began rebooting the navigation core. Lorenth scanned long-range signals. There was a flicker on the display, an unscheduled vessel nearby, heavily armed, no Union identification. She leaned closer. That ship is Solari, she said. Cade squinted at the scan. Doesn't look friendly. It's not. That registry code belongs to the Saren faction. The ones who want to break the peace talks. Yes, they consider human alliances a betrayal, and me a traitor. Cade leaned forward. How personal are we talking? The commander is my cousin. Oh good, family drama and political sabotage. I was just thinking this mission lacked emotional landmines. They will demand I turn you over. And what's the polite Solari response to that? She stood. We do not respond politely. The Saren ship hailed them. Lorenth answered. The screen blinked on to reveal a male Solari with jagged facial markings and armor shaped more for intimidation than ceremony. His eyes narrowed the moment he saw her. Lorenth, you shame your blood. And you overcompensate with armor plating, she replied. You travel with a human, the traitor's path. I travel with someone assigned by the Union. You had a choice. Hand him over or we disable your vessel and collect the wreckage. Cade stepped into view, smiling like a man who knew he was seconds from being vaporized. Hi, I bring snacks, mostly sarcasm-flavored. The commander ignored him. You have 1 minute. The feed cut. Cade exhaled. Well, that was warm. They will attack regardless of my answer, she said, already inputting commands. He pulled out a small, humming device from his toolkit. What if I installed a surprise? We overload the rear thrusters, set the ship to spin, and drop an improvised bomb into their intake as we pass. That would be suicidal. It would also be impressive. She looked at him for a long moment. You enjoy this. I enjoy not dying, preferably with flair. They worked in tense rhythm. Cade connected the bomb, an unstable mess of plasma cells, alloy scraps, and something labeled not for detonation, to a magnetic launcher. Lorenth plotted a false retreat trajectory to bait the enemy in close. Timing is everything, she said as they initiated sequence. Tell that to my last date. She arrived 12 hours late and was technically a bounty hunter. They launched. The Saren ship followed, weapons charging. Cade steered them into a slow spin, the gravity controls rattling with each loop. The drone launcher beeped. Lorenth armed the bomb. 3, she said. 2, he echoed. One now. The launcher fired. The device flew through space, embedding itself into the enemy's intake system milliseconds before it detonated. A blue-white burst rippled across the void, disabling their propulsion and throwing their ship into a dead spin. Cade whooped. Yes. That's what I call expressive problem-solving. Lorenth kept her expression unreadable. They'll recover. Not before we make our exit. They jumped into hyperspace seconds later, the ship groaning in protest but holding together. When they emerged, Heliox loomed ahead. The diplomatic summit station was visible, orbiting the pale gas giant like a glimmering thorn. Cade slowed the ship. Lorenth watched the incoming traffic patterns. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. "I didn't hand you over," she finally said. "I noticed, thanks for that. It wasn't a tactical decision. I figured you hesitated. I hate hesitation. I hate most things that explode near my head. But I still stick around." She stared at him, her voice quieter now. "You would have done the same. I would have tried, but I'm not you." "Exactly." He smiled. Was that a compliment? It was a fact. They docked at the summit station in silence. Official clearance codes transmitted. A greeting team waited. The political machinery was already moving, preparing for staged handshakes and neutral expressions. Before opening the hatch, Cade hesitated. "Once we step out," he said, "we're back to being symbols. You, the diplomat, me, the escort who talks too much. I will not deny the second part. But before that..." She leaned in suddenly, her forehead nearly touching his. Her voice was barely a breath. "I hate all humans," she said again, "but I trusted you." He blinked, "And you snore louder than the main reactor." The door opened before he could reply. Lorenth walked out without looking back. Cade followed, whispering under his breath, "Still counts as flirting." The summit chamber smelled like recycled air and diplomatic tension. Cade stood behind the transparent security field, arms folded, listening to half a dozen species argue in alternating frequencies. One delegate spoke only in sense. Another emitted subtle vibrations through the floor, which someone had forgotten to translate. The translator AI gave up and started quoting poetry. No one noticed. Lorenth stood at the center platform, flanked by two Union officials and one visibly sweating human ambassador who kept adjusting his collar like it was strangling his dignity. The Solari delegation had arrived late. Not by accident. A display of power disguised as inconvenience. Her cousin was among them, bruised pride hidden behind ceremonial robes. He said nothing, but his gaze lingered on Cade long enough to feel like a threat, or maybe just indigestion. Cade muttered, "Bet he still hears the bomb humming when he sleeps." The ambassador beside him whispered, "Do you always speak like this during galactic summits?" "Only when they involve people who tried to kill me in the last 48 hours. Duly noted. Lorenth began to speak. Her voice carried, not loud but clear. She quoted ancient Solari texts, then pivoted into a breakdown of mutual interests, defensive alliances, and the cost of continued division. Midway through, she referenced the ambush in the Vale corridor, carefully omitting names but making it very clear that sabotage had failed. The room held its breath. Even the scent-based delegate paused mid-whiff. She finished with, "Trust is a construct we choose to build, not because we forget the past but because we refuse to be buried in it." Cade, not realizing the mic feed had been activated to his section, clapped once, then froze. The room turned, he coughed. I drop things sometimes, it was spontaneous gravity." Lorenth didn't flinch, but one ear twitched upward. The vote passed. Barely, but it passed. Afterward the debrief was brief. Union brass shook hands, patted shoulders, and disappeared into private lounges to celebrate with drinks that glowed ominously. Cade stood in the corridor, staring out at the storm bands of Heliox's atmosphere through a wide observation panel. Lorenth found him there quiet. "You did well," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "You mean I didn't actively ruin anything?" "That qualifies as well." He smiled. "So what happens now?" She looked back toward the chamber. "My people will not forget this. Some will say I compromised, others will say I evolved. What do you say? I say the stars hum a different pattern now. That's poetic. Did your bracelet tell you that? She handed him something. He looked down. It was the old Earth coin he'd offered her earlier, worn, scratched, still warm from her palm. I thought you didn't want it. I changed my mind. He took it, turning it over once. You think we'll see each other again? I suspect you'll find a way to make that inevitable. I'm excellent at being inconvenient. She stepped closer. You taught me something important. Was it the toaster joke? Because I swear it's better the second time. No, you reminded me that walls can be climbed, even ones we built ourselves. He nodded. That's surprisingly deep for someone who once threatened to airlock me for breathing too loudly. You still breathe too loudly. I try to be memorable. A silence stretched between them, comfortable, unhurried, not avoidance, not hesitation, just space shared without needing to fill it. A signal beeped on Cade's wrist. His transport was ready. Orders were waiting. Missions never really ended.